you put your questions in the chat window, we will get to as many of those questions as possible. And without further ado,
join the meeting.
Let's go to our trustee, Dr. Edwin Flores, for opening remarks.
Thank you, Luana. Really appreciate everybody being here. I mean, the staff, I mean, we have kind of an all-star cast here that'll be introduced in a second. When Dr. Hinojosa had his fireside chat a few weeks ago, I thought, you know what, we need to do this. And so I waited until after school started so that we could get some questions and feedback on what was already going on in our schools, first starting virtually, and now in our restart plan that we'll talk about today that the board reviewed last Thursday. And so I wanted to get this as soon as possible to as many members of our community so that they knew what the rules of the game are at this point. We need to be flexible and we need to be patient. These things are ever changing. You look at the numbers every day for no number of cases, et cetera, and they keep on changing. Fortunately, it had been kind of on a downward trend. There was a little uptick yesterday, but hopefully we will get back on the downward trend and we will all be back in school as soon as possible. So with that, I'll turn it back to Luana to lead our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Flores. I would like to take a quick moment here to introduce the members of the panel, just so you who are viewing and listening to us have some idea who is here to answer your questions. I would like our panel members to please unmute briefly as their name is called and just greet us so that you can see who they are. I'd like to start with Brian Lusk, Chief Strategic Officer.
Good evening, great to be here and good to see y'all this evening.
Chief Jerome Kalanick, Chief of Technology.
Hi, everybody. Look forward to hearing your questions tonight.
Mark Ramirez, Deputy Chief of School Leadership.
Good evening, everyone.
Melody Pascal, Executive Director of School Leadership.
Good evening, everyone.
I will say that Melody is the Executive Director for schools in secondary schools in a number of our North Dallas feeder patterns, and we'll get more information from her in just a bit. We also have Juan Cordoba, an Executive Director in School Leadership.
Good evening, everybody. Excited to be here. Look forward to answering your questions. And thank you to all of our principals who joined us. Hillcrest White Elementary Cluster.
Elena Hill, Assistant Superintendent, Early Learning.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's so good to be here.
Yudi Awele, I knew I was going to do that. Yudi Aweluike.
Awelike, that's okay.
Manager.
Thank
I'm sorry.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here with you.
Dwayne Thompson, Chief Business Officer.
Good evening, everyone.
Dino Harris, Deputy Chief of Operations.
Good evening, everyone.
David Bates, Executive Director, Maintenance and Operations.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Dr. Cynthia Wilson, Chief of Human Capital Management.
Good evening.
Thanks to everybody. So as you can see, we have an all-star cast here just ready to answer your questions. But before we go to questions, we want to remind you that you can put your questions in the chat window. We will take as many of those as we possibly can. However, before we start with questions, we have a presentation that we would like to have several members of our panel make some statements, and to accompany that, we have a PowerPoint presentation which we'd like to launch now. The host has put that PowerPoint presentation up, and our first presenters are Melody Pascal, Executive Director of Secondary Schools, and Juan Cordoba, Executive Director of Elementary Schools. And they are the EDs in the Hillcrest and White feeder patterns. Please correct me if I've left something off that's important. Please take it away.
Well, good evening, Mark Ramirez. Actually, I think I'll be doing the presentation here on behalf of school leadership. So again, welcome and everyone, and good evening. So can you go to the next slide? Next slide, please. I think one more. There you go. So our agenda for today for this portion of our presentation is we're going to talk about the revised reentry plan for Dallas ISD, density planning for those campuses that have over 60% of the students returning based on our parent surveys. Look back at, we did some focus groups to get feedback from parents, community members, and administrators. We'll look at the reentry timeline adjustment and next steps that school leadership is planning. Next slide, please. So this is our revised reentry plan for the district. We want to value our youngest learners first, because those are really, it's more because they're unfamiliar with the building. So they can come in, get used to the staff, with routines. And we believe it's going to be the greatest benefit to bring in our youngest learners first with less students at each campus. And also we're going to have more staff to support them and more time to meet their families and ensure they have all the help they need. So if you look at the chart, again, on the left-hand side is really the campus type by level. And again, the main ones are the elementary, middle, and high school. But we do have some pre-K-8 schools, some 4-8 campuses, and some 6 to 12th grade campuses. So we want to bring in the youngest grade level a week early according to campus configuration, and that would be September the 28th. So what that would look like is on September the 28th for traditional elementary campuses, we'll bring in our pre-K and kinder students first, and those are the students that chose to come face-to-face. At middle school, that would be our 6th grade, and then our high school, that would be our 9th graders. So again, it'll be less students on at each campus. And again, it will give us a chance to get to know the students and to ensure that, you know, we're following our safety protocols and get our staff and our students acclimated to the students. Now, there's also on the bottom, you look at, well, before I go there, and then the following week, which is October the 5th, then that's when all the other grades will return. So again, this would be every student, every family that chose to come in and have the face-to-face option. Their return date would be October the 5th. Now on the bottom, if you look, there's also a phased-in approach for students' activities as well. So today, actually, the JV and the 9th grade athletics returned. On the 8th, we had varsity athletics and special ed one-on-one supports that were scheduled by appointment only. We had about 1,500 students participating in athletics that returned on the 8th. And then on the 17th, which is this, on the 17th, we're gonna have the special ed department has called students, scheduled one-on-one meetings with the parents to find out which of our students that are in self-contained classes want to return on the 17th. So we do have about 30% of our special ed students that wanted to return for that as an option. And then on the 21st, marching band, cheer, drill team will return. And then on the 28th is when we'll begin with middle school athletics. Next slide, please. Now, density planning. Now, this has been a topic of discussion that we've looked at over the past week. And just talking about the return rate for each of our campuses. Now, it's been a little bit tricky because density planning is another important aspect of our preparation. We hope to move to an orange risk level to yellow so we can welcome back a large number of students. But for now, we're looking at if a campus, if the parents voted or said that they want their students to attend face-to-face and that campus is at 60% or higher, then it's gonna pretty initiate like a red flag for us to kind of say, okay, we may need to plan for an alternative method. And that would mean we need to look at building utilization. We need to look at floor plans, classroom size, and personnel for social distancing. And again, it varies because the sizes of the campuses are a little bit different. So some campuses, they could do 60% with no problem, ensuring that we're following the 6-foot distance between students. We can accept it because we have space at that campus. Now, there's some campuses that 60% may be pushing it. So we may not have an option, especially if we get to 70% or 80%, saying we may not be able to bring everyone and feel that everyone keeping everyone safe, following all the safety protocols. So that means, again, it's gonna initiate us to look at what could be some alternative plans. So adjustments will be made. Now I want to stress, we want to ensure minimal disruption. And if unresolved, the principals will create a hybrid plan. And I think that's one of the things that took off at the last board meeting with the hybrid plan, is saying we're going to have to look at every campus. The campus principal will have to look and talk to parents, talk to SBDM and different community members just to kind of see what would that look like for this campus? And does it make sense? And how can we ensure that we keep all of our students safe? Now, nearby schools, that was another option that we looked at. Nearby schools that maybe have space could be an option for parents that do want to bring their campuses 5 days a week. And again, that is if we do go to a hybrid model, which again, it's going to depend on a lot of different factors. So parents will have 3 options. Number 1 is just going back to distance learning. They could do the campus hybrid, which would mean, again, certain grade levels will be there certain days of the week, or transfer to a nearby school for 5 days of a week of instruction. Again, that is if a parent says, I need my child to be in campus 5 days a week for work situations or different situations, then we will make sure that that is an option for our parents. Next slide, please. Now, before we got even to this point, we did get a group of, it was over 102 community members that included EDs, representatives from every feeder pattern, which include principals, teachers, parents. And we also brought in AFT and NEA and Teach Plus to kind of give us feedback on the different plans. And this was really the plan to start early and on the hybrid model. And again, if you look here on the slide, it kind of gives you kind of what the feedback that we received. And I mean, I'm not going to read every point to you, but just say like some benefits that was a common discussion in the group is that it did maximize learning during low infection time, share time for new students and parents to acclimate to again, the new school, new surroundings, provides more time for small group and map completion are some of the major things that I want to highlight in the benefits. Now, the benefits of a hybrid, again, it provided the flexibility to meet individual campus needs and ensure that we keep safety at priority. And again, as I'm going through, I'm also looking at some of these questions. So is hybrid? Yes, well, hybrid is an option again, if we have over 60% of our students returning to a campus, and if the campus does not have the necessary space to ensure that our students are safe. So some considerations for a phase start is, again, preparation, focus on clarity, teacher concerns with changing the plans. So again, that was something kind of that came up. And what about if siblings have different start dates? So again, so we'll work with families to ensure that siblings are being taken care of and to ensure that we're communicating the plan effectively. Some considerations for the hybrid model included just family burdens. And again, I mentioned that earlier. Mom and dad have to work, so I need my child to go to school, and then transportation concerns. Some ideas that we considered is adding 6th grade early start for pre-K 8 schools, stagger for more grade levels into October, and then align specific community data with individualized school start time are some of the feedback that we received from the group. Next slide, please. Now, this is really the same thing that I presented here a few minutes ago, but it's just really the timeline and just a chronological order of where we are. So I'll skip down September 14th, and that was today. And again, today was phase 2, and that's when JV and 9th grade athletics returned to on campus for athletic activities. On the 17th, that is when staff persons will report, well, really it's more for designated special ed classes for parent opt-in. So if a parent opted, I have a special ed student, I want him or her to return to campus, then the start date, that would be phase 3, and that begins on September 17th. On September 21st is this phase 4 for marching band, drill team, and cheerleading to begin. On the 28th, that is our 1 week early return for, again, the youngest grade level at every campus. And again, that's pre-K and kinder. Mainly 6th grade and 9th grade, but again, there's, depending on what the configuration of the school, is the youngest grade level at every campus. And again, I think there was something in the chat earlier that I saw, we do have 7-12 campuses. So that would be the 7th graders, not 6 to 12. But if it's a 7-12 campus, the 7th graders will return earlier. And then on October the 5th is when all student groups will return on October the 5th. And again, all student groups that elected to come back in the face-to-face format. So that's, again, our timeline. And again, in closing, these are the next big steps, and communication is going to be vital. communication to everyone, all community members, staff members, students. We will use every path and platform available. We will also prioritize the parent survey and seek strong response rate. That's kind of where we're at right now. Right now, we're pushing to get those parent surveys back because we need those parent surveys back to help us plan effectively. And the earlier we have that, the better, the more time we have to plan. So again, so there's some campuses that are doing real good with parent response rates, but there's also some that we're struggling like at 30 or 40%. So we're gonna do a big push tomorrow and through Friday just to get as many of these parent surveys back, again, so we can plan effectively. And then we will prepare and continue to provide aligned, engaging, tech-based instruction. So again, that's my piece, and thanks so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramirez. We appreciate that. I do want to make one correction. I did not introduce our Chief Academic Officer, Shannon Trejo. Shannon, if you want to unmute and just say hello so people know that you're here.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you, Luan.
Thank you so much. And now we are going to have a presentation about our reading academies. So our next presenters, please take the stage.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Elena Hill, and I work in early learning as assistant superintendent. We do have Ms. Awelike here with us today, and we will both be able to answer any questions that you have. Next slide. So I'm here to tell you about an exciting opportunity that we have in Dallas ISD with our HB3 Reading Academies. If you could, thank you so much. So the Reading Academies are a way that all of our teachers in Dallas ISD are going to be able to go through a systematic training on teaching children how to read. And so Dallas ISD has totally optimized the implementation of Reading Academies. We have begun this year. And I'm here just to give you a very high level overview of what the Reading Academies will entail and what you will come to expect for the schools that your children attend. And so it is a legislative mandate, and we are taking this mandate and we are really using the content of the Reading Academy to really make sure that our teachers are very strong in their reading instruction. So of course we can improve our literacy achievement. I'm not going to read this slide to you, but I do want to point out that one of the biggest highlights or benefits of our Reading Academy is closing our achievement gap for our Latinx and African American students. We will be implementing a 3-year phasing plan, and the goal is to have all of our teachers in Dallas ISD trained by the end of the 2022-2023 school year. You can go to the next slide, please. So here's our phase out plan that we are going to be implementing. This year we are training 56 campuses. Next school year in year 2, we're going to be training 51. And then in year 3, 45 campuses. We want to just point your attention to the different tracks that participants will be able to attend the Reading Academy. There will be a general education track, a biliteracy track, as well as an administrator track. And so by the time all of our teachers and coaches and our media specialists are trained in Dallas ISD, they will have gone through one of these tracks. Modules are exciting. They really give us a lot of robust literacy content. As you can see there are 12 modules that all teachers will progress through. While there are some biliteracy components in each one of these modules, this is the first time that the state of Texas has offered a separate standalone biliteracy track. And so the modules that are highlighted in blue are actually standalone biliteracy. The reason that's important, you all, is because we know that while there are a lot of similarities in English and Spanish, there are some things that are very distinct as we teach our children how to read. Next slide, please. Just want to give a little data behind this. This is what we call our predictive model. And the story that this is telling here is if you follow the blue line, That's the line that if we just continued with what we have been doing with supporting campuses, especially campuses that are high priority, then we may not make as much progress as we could if we really accelerated our efforts. And so if you follow the green line, we believe that Reading Academies is something that is really going to help accelerate this growth and really get us to our goal of 60% of our third grade students reading on or above grade level by 2025. Next slide, please. So I just want to give you a little bit of exciting information about our cohort leader process. Dallas ISD did apply for and was approved to serve as its own authorized provider, which means that we are able to oversee everything Reading Academy for our district. And part of that work is actually staffing the cohort leaders. Now, cohort leader is a term that the Texas Education Agency uses to name the people that are actually delivering the content of the Reading Academy. And the Reading Academy from TEA is a very rigorous process, and our cohort leaders went through it. And as you can see on this slide, that out of 132 participants that attempted the full screener process in Dallas ISD, 93% became actual cohort leaders. And I do want to point out that if we compare that to the state, only 41% of registrants who attempted the full screener became cohort leaders. So the message here is that in Dallas ISD, we do account for over 10% of the cohort leaders who have the ability to deliver the Reading Academy content. Just for information, we do have an advisory council that we engage with on a monthly basis, and this is a cross-sectional group of stakeholders in our district, and they really just help with helping us make key decisions and then recommendations as we progress through the Reading Academy. This is a very exciting slide. Again, we have 56 campuses, 53 this year, or this first year are going through the comprehensive format, and then 3 are going through the blended format. Comprehensive just means the face-to-face. Of course, we did have to modify that to be a synchronous Zoom, but we are still going to go back to face-to-face when we can. But what I want to point out here is that this first year, we have 1,200 administrators and teachers who are going through the Reading Academy. And as you can see, we have lots of different cohorts, and we are really differentiating our coaching support to really meet the needs of each of the groups that we serve. When we started the Reading Academy in July with registration, within the first week, we had over 75% of the registrants already, registered and ready to go and engaging in Canvas, which is the learning management system that TEA uses. And as you can see, there are thousands of assignments and discussion topics and files uploaded just in the first part of the Reading Academy. So it's been a really, really big hit. Next slide. So that is the presentation for Reading Academies. Again, we will give you updates or answer any questions that you have, and really look forward to providing this for all of our teachers in Dallas ISD. Thank you.
Okay, this is Dwayne Thompson. I'll walk us through some of the construction, and David Bates will do other ones if we can go ahead and move forward. So I'll do TJ and Carrie at the same time. As you're aware, we're making a transition to a new construction manager at that site. The board will be taking that into consideration at the night meeting, and so we have reached an agreement with another vendor. So we will be presenting that to the board for their consideration. But even though we don't have a construction manager on the job, the architects have continued to design the facility, so that has continued on even in this interim period. If we go to the next slide. So I'll let David Bates take it on this campus.
Hello, everyone. Lots of familiar faces, an area that I served for 15 years. So let's just talk about W.T. White High School for a second. These slides are excerpts from a weekly report that I have our project managers do to keep all of us updated on the progress of our construction facilities. This one in particular, kind of getting back on track with the competition gym and the fine arts area. So when we talk about the addition, we're getting there. We're trying to get this thing opened and turned over, and especially the fine arts, in order to get the kids out of the area that they're in so we can continue to make renovations. So when you look at it, you know, we have a couple $30 million projects. This one is about 80% complete on that. The competition, again, scheduled for like the 28th of September, and so is the fine arts. Now, a little bit of a setback because we had some water drip on the floor, so we're working through that. And there's a wonderful principal there. She's kind of leaving construction at E.D. Walker and coming into construction at W.T. White. But I do appreciate the administration for working. Join the meeting. Projects. Walnut Hill, I'll turn that over to.
I've covered that, except that if you go out there, you know that Cary has been completely demolished, and so we're now once we get a construction manager in place, we'll begin the grading for this particular campus as the new pre-K-8.
Okay, E.D. Walker, and this one has got a brand new principal, and she's great. And this is near to my heart because my nephew goes to this school, and I believe, Olivia, you're on the call, so I seen you on there. At this campus, this is getting an addition, which is it's really exciting. I think the community is really excited about this addition. We're about 90% complete. Then they'll, you know, once we get to 100, it's not necessarily 100 because we have punch list items that we'll go through. But there's renovations to this building because, as you know, all of our buildings, construction, you know, may be messy and may be noisy and may be just a nuisance, but it is very much needed in our buildings that are old and dated, and there's new ed specs that we have to meet. So the renovations to our existing classrooms and a new addition at this campus are very much welcome, and I know the community really appreciates it. So two very exciting projects going on in District 1. Thank you.
Thank you both for that information. I've noticed that we do have questions in the chat, and that people are chatting back to you, answering your questions. If you're able, please go to the chat where you will be able to see answers to perhaps some of the same questions that are on your mind. Additionally, we will take questions for the panel. One of the questions that we have here is, when will Walker be open as a K-8 building? Has that been answered yet? Or David, could you or Dwayne take that one?
I'd have to lean on school leadership a little bit about the, I guess, the phase-in plan. I know when we have the addition done and the renovations done, that'll open up seats so we can, you know, alleviate some of the overcrowding at Anne Frank. And that's where school leadership will come in and have a phase-in plan of what students will go and when they'll go and how many will go. So yes and no, I can't answer the time frame on that, but I do know school leadership has a plan.
And David, I don't have any more specifics, but I'll make sure I get that information out to Trustee Flores.
Someone is also asking regarding Walker as a pre-K-8, will there be an attendance boundary committee?
So I guess I'll answer that one as well. If school leadership and the board decides to make this a K-8 school and we bring these kids in, then we will definitely have to form a committee to come up with the boundaries. Like I said, we want to alleviate Anne Frank, but again, we'll have to figure out what students from where, right? And so we'll have to have a committee of some sort in order to help us make that decision.
And David, and I'll add, we're currently going through that right now with Jill Stone. So yeah, there's definitely a committee that will have different people on the committee. And again, we're planning out this ready for next year. But again, we already have three dates in the book right now. Have this committee to get feedback from the community on any type of boundary change. And again, but right now, let me just clarify, it's for Jill Stone. But if there is something that's in the plans for Anne Frank, we'll follow the same process.
It looks like there's also a question in there about TJ. Someone saying they did not hear much about TJ. I know there was a slide on TJ. What can you share?
Okay, so this is Dwayne again. I can cover that. For TJ, obviously there was a change in the construction manager. We have reached an agreement with another construction manager that we're taking to the board at the night meeting for this month. So if that's approved, then there will be, they'll have they'll be getting up to speed and begin the next phase. So at that particular site, when we, obviously there's been some demolition at the campus, not only for Cary, but also at portions of TJ. There'll be some additional selective demolition that's going to be happening immediately. But as we've had this delay with the construction manager, the architect has continued with drawings because we're still in the design phase and completing that up. So that work has continued even though the construction portion has had a temporary halt.
If I could right now, I'd like to re-emphasize the importance to our parents to go in and complete the parent survey about whether or not they want their children to continue distance learning or come back to in-campus learning. And I'd like to ask someone on the panel to address the importance of that for the planning process. By the way, that survey is on the homepage of the district website at www.dallasisd.org. If you have not answered the survey, please do so and help for us to communicate that to your friends and neighbors to please go in and answer that survey. Dr. Ramirez, I think you referred to that earlier, or Shannon, anyone who can put a point on that.
Yeah, let me add with the survey, and that's kind of where we're facing now. So let me just stress, it is important and it is critical. Parents, as quickly as you can, just log on and complete that survey. We are using those numbers to plan because we need to kind of figure out how many of our kids are we expecting back in the building. And just to kind of make it simple, I'm just going to use a campus of 500. If it's a small campus, you know, and we know that 100 students are going to come back, and then we can plan accordingly. But if we're going to have 450 students come back in a building that is built for 500, then obviously that's going to trigger us. So we're going to have to look at alternative options. Now, right now, I will say, just based on the surveys, we have 2 campuses that are reaching that 60%. And those campuses we need to we already start looking at what would be some options. But again, it's kind of hard to tell because if we don't have all the surveys, and I believe Mr. Lusk, Dr. Lusk mentioned earlier, we're close to about 50% of our surveys complete, but we still need another 50%. So we need as much data as possible, as quickly as possible, to make sure that we have enough time to plan accordingly and ensure that all of our kids are safe. And I don't know, Mr. I hope you want to add anything that I missed.
No, that sounds good.
Another question we have is, does the change in the construction manager for TJ and Walnut Hill change the expected opening dates?
Well, as we get the new construction manager on, they'll be looking at the schedule. When the change was made, I anticipated that there will be a delay and that would cause a different date. We will finalize that date with the board, and that will be publicized whenever that is done. The other thing that we have as an option is that we've discussed with this particular construction manager is at bid date to bid it for not only whatever their projected start date is, but a bid date for an August finish. So we'd be able to clearly show the board what the cost would be if we were even able to get back to a start date for the start of school. So all those things will be considered once I get the board's approval for the new construction manager.
I'm not seeing any additional new questions in the chat.
Luana, can I just say something real quick?
Please, please.
So when the board reviewed the issue at TJ and the change to a new construction company, we reviewed the schedule very, very carefully that was available at the time. And the fact of the matter was that there were only 11 contingency days in that very, very tight schedule to begin with. So, to be able to get those kiddos back by, August of 2022 was already going to be a tight fit. We are hopeful that the new company will be able to come up with a plan that'll get us there in time. And we'll see whether the board is able to, support a change in that, possibility for the schedule. Now, I'll say that in my experience, I've been on the board for a while. When we were building Booker T was supposed to be back in the building by Christmas. We ended up getting them back in a little after spring break. When we redid SOC, those kids were supposed to be back at the beginning of the year. It ended up that they were back in the middle of the year after the first semester. I'm hopeful that we can get this done in time. That's the promise we made to our kids. But there's also reality, and that is just construction just takes time. And we also don't want to rush it. We want to do it right. And so I think that those are important parameters to bear in mind. But the board is very, very well aware of the schedule, of the challenges with that schedule, and I believe unanimously made the right decision to move on from the company we're going to use. So I think that hopefully we'll be able to get those kiddos back into their new schools close to on schedule. For the Walnut Hill K-8, that's a different story also, because it's not a renovation. It is literally a brand new building from scratch. So that timeline is a lot more manageable.
Is Grandma still on the phone? So, okay, Grandma, I'm on a Zoom with DISD. Okay. I'm done at 7. Let me.
Could we ask you to mute your call, Beth?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So if I may, Luana, I just want to share one piece of information. I'm seeing in the chat there are multiple questions around Walnut Hill and Walker, and I also see reference to charter. I just want to be clear that we don't have charter schools in Dallas ISD, and those will not be charter schools. And I think some people were thinking about choice schools. That may be the better language, but nonetheless, I just want to be clear with the group that that's not, they won't be charter schools.
So there's a question. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say there's a question about DeGolyer and the plan. Well, we're not really allowed to talk about the bond because now that we've called it, that would not be considered, could be potentially considered electioneering. But I can say that as a matter of fact, DeGolyer is scheduled for replacement.
Another question is to principals. This questioner is asking, how are you communicating with parents during the school day, considering that there are likely one or more parents at home supervising their children?
This is Principal Luna over at Nathan Adams Elementary. I entered my response in the chat, but I can say that we use apps such as Class Dojo to communicate with parents. We also use School Messenger, emails. We do direct phone calls to parents. Teachers are in constant contact with parents. And we also use social media.
Thank you. I didn't notice that you had answered that question. Thanks to everybody for chipping in with the chat, answering some of those questions directly. Again, we want to remind those of us who are participating in the call, you can certainly go to the chat. You will see a lot of information there that has already been discussed and that might be helpful to you. I'd like to ask our panel, is there anything that is a burning issue that perhaps we have not covered that needs to be brought up at this point?
So Yeah, I was just going to say there were some questions about the bond. Again, I said, as I mentioned briefly, that we're not allowed to talk about the bond. I'll be hosting meetings separate from anything related to the school district or even school district facilities related to that. Again, because we're not allowed to. And I see that all our principals are chiming in on answering the questions, which is awesome. We did have a meeting with the Kramer community a couple, I guess maybe about a month, 6 weeks ago, again, leading up to all of this. And I'll throw it out there that I'll be glad to host meetings for any of the schools in District 1 to be able to have this kind of communication. I'm a little surprised in this meeting that we're not getting as many of the HR questions. In our last meeting and at the Kramer meeting, there were a ton of HR questions, for staff. Staff can chime in and ask questions about all sorts of matters related to this. We have Dr. Cynthia Wilson on board to answer questions. I know we have Sherry Christians on also to answer questions. So we have, but let me tell you, this is an all-star, this is the top leadership of the school district that does all the work absent, except for the superintendent. So please ask your questions. We have an amazing group of folks.
Kramer has a PTA meeting right after this, so that's probably why they're not on here right now.
But I'll tell you, they were great questions. I got every single one of those over to Dr. Wilson because we'll keep this chat and then whoever is responsible for those areas will be either able to respond or throw in their 2 cents. So please ask your questions. I mean, we have lots of time to answer questions, and we have some great folks on board to answer those.
You asked for it, looks like you got it. Dr. Flores, someone is asking, how much freedom will the staff have in choosing to return in person? This commenter says, my memory is the staff will have a choice up to a certain date and then it will change. Can we get clarification there?
Sure, thank you. I'm happy to respond to that question. As we begin to return students earlier, of course, that means that our teachers have now become essential staff. On the original request for time away from the campus or teaching away from the campus, those were granted because students were not returning. However, with our new plan, all teachers will return to the campus September the 17th. And our principals are excited to welcome you. We know that many of the districts in our surrounding districts have returned. We've been monitoring them very closely to determine if there were problems with large groups of teachers returning to campus, and there have not been any significant reportings that there are problems. Of course, we've prepared the campuses with all of the PPE equipment that they need. The principals are getting that out as quickly as possible. We want to assure you that we want everyone to be safe, but we also have the flexibility of employees submitting an leave of absence request should they feel that their health would be endangered by returning to work at this time. We encourage you to call the benefits department. We receive many calls. We're not upset about that, but we just want you to know there may be some times when it will be a longer wait than usual to have your question answered, but we're making every effort to answer those questions. If you are a staff member, please just email me and I'm happy to respond and get a response for you personally if you need that, if you need an answer quickly.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. There is another question in the chat asking if teachers will be required to teach online and in person at the same time. Shannon, I think I've heard you respond to that before. Not in this meeting, but yes.
Happy to address that question. There are actually 3 different models available to campuses. One that we're in right now is our all virtual model where all students and teachers are functioning in a virtual environment. The second model does allow for teachers to support both virtual students and in-person students. There's a couple of benefits to having that happen. Parents do have the option to change their mind. So as we make decisions for our families based on the data that's in front of us, parents can opt to return to school in person and then perhaps change their mind and want to transfer back out to the virtual setting, that can be done. If a teacher is supporting a group of 22 students and half of them are virtual and half of them are in person, and those students switch out from time to time, there's a little less disruption for that students. They're able to maintain their same teacher, and they're able to make that transition a little bit easier. Another way that teaching both in-person and virtual students supported by the same teacher can happen at the secondary level is if students are actually scheduled into classes that contain all of the same group. So for example, if a teacher is teaching 7 periods a day, 3 of those periods may be just virtual students scheduled into those periods, and the rest of them may be in person. So the teacher is actually supporting both types of learners, but it's not simultaneous. The last option, which you mentioned, has to do with assigning a teacher to only virtual students or a teacher who will teach only in-person students. I can tell you that has actually been left up to the campus principal to make that decision based on their unique student return rate as well as their teacher needs, so that they can establish the best possible case scenario for all students and teachers.
I'm also seeing questions about PPE, especially with regard to masks. I've heard repeatedly that, David, you have fully supplied the campuses with PPE. You might want to reiterate that again.
Yeah, sure. So every campus has got enough stuff to start right now. They're going to still receive a whole lot more. For instance, I want every teacher to have 4 gallons of hand sanitizer. Right now, they may only have 2, right? But we can start school tomorrow if we needed to. There's plexiglass, there's masks, there's disposable masks, reusable masks, there's masks with logos, there's cloth masks, there's face shields, there's all kinds of stuff that we were able to order and get it in, and it's still coming in. For instance, at our dock today, we had the individual 1-ounce bottles of hand sanitizer, 1 for each student. That'll be they'll be delivered to each campus, so the principals can give out to their teachers, and individual bins for the kids to put their supplies in at the elementary school. There's plexiglass in the cafeterias, there's plexiglass in the tabletops. 4th through 8th graders got individual sneeze guards that they can carry around. And right now what we're doing is the big plexiglass, which are collaboration stations. Like, it's 4 foot tall, so you can put 4 desks around it. You can still have some small group learning going on. There's quite a bit of stuff that we were able to get. Spray for the teachers, wipes for the teachers. There's a lot. The principals have been great receiving it, and the custodians have been just my favorite people in the world. They, when the whole thing shut down, they continued to work, and they continue to work, and they're, cleaning and putting plexiglass together and doing everything, putting signs down on the floors. So if you go to one of our campuses, with the guidance of our principals, who have been fabulous, the custodians have really done a great job.
Thanks so much, David. Another question has to do with how are we going to handle social distancing during the passing periods at the schools?
And I can probably address that. I know each of the campuses is actually working on putting up signage in the hallways to make sure that we are keeping that social distance ever cognizant in our minds for kids and for staff members. A lot of the campuses are also organizing what they're calling cohorting, where, for example, in a high school, they may have a certain grade level attend to only one part of the building, and then they'll stagger the bell schedule so that fewer students are out in the hallways at any one time to ensure, again, that we're reducing density in the hallways. In large areas like cafeterias, as David just explained, we're putting up plexiglass, we're having students face in one direction. We've got signage out to remind students about the distance that we need to be kept apart. So again, that is something we are going to work very hard to be vigilant with, and to help make sure there are constant reminders for students and staff that social distancing is one of the key factors in protecting against spread of COVID.
Thanks so much, Shannon. Something that hasn't been discussed, I don't think, at this meeting is transportation. I know that our transportation call center has begun operations and they are already moving students. And maybe, David, could you give us a little bit of update on that?
I think Dino Harris is on to answer questions about transportation.
Thank you, Dino Harris.
I'm here. Yes, so the transportation call center is up. If you haven't had an opportunity to call it, it's 972-9254 bus. They're already taking calls now, and they're through next week, they'll be there until 5:30, and then next week they'll be there until 6 o'clock, 6:30, taking calls. And so we're out there today. They've been driving routes, doing our test routes to make sure that that the drivers know where they're going to pick up the kids. There also, if there's questions related to how the kids will social distance on the buses, the seats will be marked with big red X's, and we'll be seating the students at every other seat, so no student will be allowed to sit back to back, side by side to each other. The students will be temperature checked when they get on the bus, before they get on the bus as well. They'll be, if they don't have a mask or their PPE, we'll be issuing that to them as well when they get on the bus. And the buses will be cleaned in between routes, all the contact surfaces, as well as on the after hours. And then every 90 days, we'll do the intensive cleaning on the buses. But the buses are already currently running routes. The call center is up. So we're just preparing for when everybody comes back. So we're just doing our mock drills right now to do it, whatever we can do to make sure that we're successful.
Thanks very much, Dino. Appreciate that. We are at 6:54, so our time is winding down. We will save the chat, as Dr. Flores has asked us to, and there will be answers to most of those questions in the chat that perhaps we can find somewhere on the website in order to save that information. Dr. Flores, did you have any closing remarks that you'd like to make?
Sure. Again, thank you everybody for being on this kind of fireside chat where we had just an amazing array of folks. I mean, the top level administration is here and answering your questions. There's some great questions on the chat. Staff is looking at these as well. For example, there's one question about whether you start in person and can you switch back and forth to virtual. I think Shannon addressed that. You can. It is possible. We're going to be as flexible as possible. Correct me if I'm wrong, Shannon, just before I say something wrong.
That is correct.
And as I strongly believe that we should empower our principals at all times in every possible way, and they're all on the call, and I thank them for being here. Just an amazing group of principals in D1, and I thank them. They don't have to be here. They're here because they want to be here. And so I appreciate all of you being on the call and being flexible and patient. We don't control what happens with COVID. It's a virus. It is not a thinking being. It just does what it does. But hopefully with social distancing, continuing to wear masks, making the right decisions, washing your hands, keeping your hands out of your face, and if you're sick, staying at home and getting tested. Hopefully we'll get out of this, the sooner the better. There is information that Shannon just put on the chat, a link for the reentry plan that the administration has put together. So I want to just thank everybody, all the staff, and of course the families that allow us to teach their children as my kids did when they went through Dallas ISD all the way through, and for trusting us with your kids. And I thank you for joining us today. Somebody just asked about the slides being shared. I will be glad to share the slides. I don't know if there's a platform we can do that through, but these slides, most of these slides were already presented to the school board, but we could have them in one spot to share with you guys, we'll be glad to do that. Oh, somebody asked, is Jack still on? Somebody's asking an update on the hotspots. Where are we on hotspots and devices? I don't know if Jack Kalani.
Hey, I thought you guys were never going to get to me. Thank you. I get the last question.
Avoiding the
No, I've been here trying to keep focused. No, thank you for asking the question. So we launched a very aggressive communication campaign about 2 weeks ago. We really took to the airwaves and put the word out there that we have the hotspots available for students. And we still do have those hotspots available for students. We received a lot of requests. We received actually about 15,000 requests from that Get Connected campaign. And so now we're just working through the backlog. Actually, we got, it kind of flooded us a little bit. So we're working through the backlog. We're shipping, we're trying to ship about 1,000 a day, but right now we're about 800-900 a day. So we are working through it. So I would ask for just a little bit of continued patience while we get these hotspots distributed for kids. Next week, we are looking to maybe double up on our capacity by outsourcing some of that distribution. And our primary distribution method at this point is shipping to the families. So we actually find that that's just a little bit quicker in some cases to just drop them in the mail. U.S. Postal Service is functioning well right now, and it's only taken about a day once it leaves our hands. So we're definitely working through that backlog of hotspot requests.
Jack, there's some questions on, there are some folks who haven't received them. Where should they go? Where is their best access to that information and getting the devices?
You bet. So if you've already made a request, and there were several ways to make those requests, you could do it online. You can call our hotline. We asked the question during student enrollment this year. So we really asked the question pretty much. It's also part of the parent survey, by the way. So we've asked the question 4 or 5 different times. So if the family has already responded to one of those mechanisms and provided the student ID for us, we have that request. So you don't need to request again. We got it. We're working through it. If you're not sure if we have your request and it's just, you haven't heard anything for 2 weeks or whatever it's been, feel free to reach out and call us. We still have the 972 and 925-6000 hotline is operational still for the next couple weeks. So we're still taking those calls. If you just need to double check to make sure that we have your request and we're processing it, just give us a call.
Great. So it looks like we're hitting our timeline here. I know that we're gathering up all the info that's on the chat, and we'll figure out a way to get that out there. I'll probably post it on my Facebook or something like that, just so that folks have it. I think there were questions that are being answered right now. I don't know how long we can leave this open so that people can look at because there are a lot of questions and there are a lot of great answers. And I don't know how long we can leave it open. But again, thank you everybody for being here. And I guess one last question. I think, did Sherry West join the call? I think I saw her at some point.
She did.
Yes, I'm here.
A video.
About the health services. There's a question about health services and contact tracing, et cetera.
Yes, so health services will conduct contact tracing on any of our positive cases and get with those individuals to let them know they have been in close contact with a person who has been deemed positive. In addition, we have, for any staff that feel like they've been in contact with a person that has the virus, there are several sites across the district where they can be tested, and we have those on our website, but they may also feel free to call our HR benefits department, our health services, and those individuals can help them with finding a site that's convenient for them to get tested.
Dr. Flores, I would like to remind everybody, we are taking FAQ questions and posting those on our website. I put the main website in the chat. I'll put it in there once again, but I know a lot of people were asking, can we capture these and place them on a website? We do actually capture these questions and put them in our FAQ list, and our communications department does a great job of making sure that the FAQs are up to date on the main website. So I'll put that link in there once again, and we will make sure to add these questions in so that we can add them to the list of questions that are commonly answered.
Great. Luana, you want to close us out?
All right, well, thanks to all of our panelists, thanks to our principals, thanks to all the parents and community members who've taken time out of their busy schedules to be here today. We really appreciate it. We hope that you will continue to work with us through this unprecedented time, as our superintendent likes to call it. We look forward to serving you. We look forward to all of the reentry plans that we have. Let's all stay safe, wear our masks, do what we're supposed to do so that we can get this virus under control and we can all come back to normal life. Yay! I'm looking forward to it. I don't know about you guys, but thanks to everyone for participating. We appreciate it, and we will be placing these answers up on the reentry page, Shannon, as you mentioned. That's all the time we have. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll capture this chat.
Thank you.